Our cell phones are silenced.
That's why I was trying to.
And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It looks like everyone got the message, but just in case, if you're here for the item on the public hearings agenda for the Craggy Avenue development, it is now going to be heard on February 24th due to an issue with the notice requirements. All right, we have one proclamation tonight, and that is a proclamation proclaiming February as Seeing Selma Month, and Councilwoman Gwen Wessler is going to present the proclamation.
Thank you.
And if Carol Hallstrom would come forward, and anyone else you would like to bring forward for the presentation of the proclamation.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Rogoff Hallstrom, a veteran of the Civil Rights Movement, and have been working with 3 generations of Ashevilleans to create, we hope, the Asheville Freedom School, and we've undertaken our first project, Seeing Selma. And if I may just introduce my colleagues, Dwayne Barton, Isaac Coleman, Brittany Bozeman, Anthony Clegg, Tiffany Debelow. And we're going to ask Brittany, an Asheville High School student, part of our group, to accept the proclamation and to say a few words. Brittany?
Gwen, you'll go over to the mic or you won't get picked up. Here we go.
Whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize the positive impact of the civil rights movement on North Carolina and Asheville, and whereas contained within the city's statement of core values is the statement, Asheville employees value and respect a diverse community, workforce, and ideas. And whereas the teaching of the history of the civil rights movement is a positive good for the community, and whereas the events that occurred in Selma, Alabama, before, during, and after 1965 have reverberated throughout our history, and whereas a group of Asheville civil rights veterans and emerging community leaders have undertaken a project called Seeing Selma, whereas in conjunction with the celebration for Black History Month, volunteers with the Seeing Selma project underwrite the ticket cost for young people and their adult mentors to attend a showing of the feature film Selma during the month of February. Now, therefore, the Mayor, Esther Mannheimer, the Mayor of the City of Asheville, does hereby proclaim February 2015 as the Seeing Selma Month in the City of Asheville, and encourages all citizens to support this worthy cause and to commend the Seeing Selma Group and commends the Seeing Selma Group for their positive contribution to our ongoing discussions of civil rights and diversity in Asheville. In witness there whereof, she's set her hand and caused the seal of the City of Asheville, North Carolina, to be affixed this 3rd day of February 2015. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank everyone for having us here. This really means a lot to us for you guys to do this. So far, we have served 54 youths and have taken them to see the Selma movie. I think it's very important because we're very detached with Black history, at least my age and my group, we are. And we really need to bring that back, especially here to Asheville. We're taking a lot of kids to see Selma, and a lot of them, it really impacts you about Black history, but also about having the rights to vote and taking advantage of those. I am actually going to get registered because of the movie. It spoke to me. We are really hoping that you guys can get the word out. It's going to be a talk back on the 28th. It's going to be a small get-together for all the people who came to see the movie, and we're going to have a talk with all of the teens and the children who watched it to see what did they take from the movie and the importance of learning about civil rights, because we want to bring that back to our youth.
Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, we have a flyer here that there will be showings at 12:45 on February 14th, 21st, and 28th. And the February 28th showing will involve discussion and party. And these showings are at the Carmike Theater. All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have anyone have any questions about the consent agenda? Any item you would like considered separately?
Mayor?
Yes.
Which number is it here? Item F? I don't think, I'm not seeking separate consideration. I was just wondering, I've heard some folks kind of confused about what this is and why we're doing it, and I'm just wondering if someone could speak to this proposal.
Would you like to go ahead and address that?
I can do it, and we also have our Assistant City Attorney, John Maddox, here, who has written this memo and looked into this. Basically, right now, we don't have any rules or policies with respect to how long that we keep videos, whether we can keep them, whether we can ever destroy them. In order to put a policy in place of any type, the first step is to consult with the Department of Cultural Resources. If we have a record in our hand and it is not part of their disposition schedule, we can never do anything with it. So John, and he can elaborate on this, communicated with the Department of Cultural Resources. They recognized there was not any policy. So the first step is actually what we have done is, in order to make this a part of the Department of Cultural Resources policy that we can adhere to, it has to come before council for approval. So what this does is says, at a minimum, you must keep these videos for 30 days. Okay? It doesn't say how long we have to keep them. That's another discussion for another day, or at what point we have to destroy them. But this is the first council action that has to take place before we can do anything else. So, as I said, this is the first thing, and all it says is we have to keep them for at least 30 days. And then after that, we'll consider, you know, the remainder of the policy. And John, where are you? Did I have anything to add?
So as we're going forward and looking at moving forward with body cameras and other sort of video things, it's obviously not tenable to archive everything that's ever created in that way, and also as far as being able to protect civil liberties and remove things that aren't of, you know, any sort of criminal investigation, to make sure that those are disposed of.
Correct. All we know right now, or what we'll know after tonight, is that we have to keep them at least 30 days. And after that, we'll come back, and I think the staff, the police interim chief will come back with some recommendations for consideration about, you know, how long that we don't keep them anymore, if you will, a date after which we would unequivocally destroy them. Is that correct? Okay.
And just to follow up on that, so for instance, if we have recordings of a significant event from several years ago, and there might be some historical quality to those that we might want to archive, just not for law enforcement purposes, but for archival library type purposes, that might be okay. I mean, but we'll consider that down the road.
I don't know that this policy is addressing that, is it, John?
No, I actually
But it doesn't preclude it. That's my only question.
Oh, no.
That's the only point. It doesn't preclude retaining some things for archival
Longer
or
than 30 days.
historical significance purposes.
early on I raised the question with the Department of Cultural Resources whether they want to evaluate these videos to see if they were something they would want to add to the state archives or hold on to outside anything we decided to do. They didn't express a lot of interest in that. I certainly revisit that with them again prior to us taking any actions to do away with these things permanently. I mean, they do, as it's been well publicized, go back 30 years. There might be something of some historical significance there. that they might want to evaluate.
Or there may be other, UNC Asheville's library or Public Library. There are other collections, archival collections that are not necessarily state.
Of course.
Okay, thanks.
If I might add, we would, in terms of process, we would, police administration, city management, and the city attorney's office would work with council, specifically your public safety committee. I would imagine we would be prepared to come there in March and share with you these administrative considerations about what is good records management, what makes sense for us to retain, and for what period of time for practical administrative reasons. There are also, not to speak for the city attorney's office, but there are liability considerations, statute of limitation considerations that may also enter into how long it would be wise to keep such videotapes. That will be something that we would welcome policy direction on. The other thing I might mention, since we've opened this up, is that the interim chief and city management also will be looking at just what our videotaping policies are, what makes sense to be videotaped, who gets them, who should make that call, who assesses the situation. And in talking with interim chief Belcher today, he indicated that it would be his preference for someone at least the captain's level be looking at the intelligence and the situation and making some judgments, and we wouldn't just be empowering everybody who has a camera to go out and take videotapes. There would be rhyme and reason to what we do, as well as internal procedures and processes to follow to make sure we're doing this and considerate of people's and sensitive to people's rights in public gatherings.
And one other thing, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're doing tonight is, I believe, all the Department of Cultural Resources wants to know. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So once if it is approved, then the ball's in the city's court, and we don't have to go back to the state. So that's sort of why we're doing this first, is to get their check off and then to move forward with our own policy past that.
And since we're discussing it a little bit here, one of the things that I think citizens should be aware of is that archiving a lot of tapes becomes a real problem for a city. I think I heard that Seattle, I believe it is, was keeping all of their body cam tapes, all of their dash cam tapes, everything that they had collected. And when a public information request came in, they estimated it might take 3 years to go through all of the tapes to find the ones that someone had asked for. So you end up with a real morass if you keep all that stuff, simply as a practical matter.
Are there any other questions on this item? If not, I have a question about a different item. So item I, I'm very excited to see is an ordinance amendment allowing for reverse angle parking or back-end parking. I assume that's why Ken may be here. And so I've heard about this issue around the Grove Wood. Wait, is it the Grove? No, the Grove Arcade. I'm sorry, Grove Arcade, where we have angled parking, and we have been ticketing people that park with the front of their car facing out, but it doesn't really make sense in that area because the street is two ways. It's not one way. My question was, so if I understand this correctly, this is now going to allow people to back into spaces in that area. That's the only place I know of where we regulate angled parking. College Street.
But why would we change it so that the ordinance will now read, any vehicle parking in any parking space laid out at an angle to the curb shall be parked with the front of the vehicle facing the curb, so that's the old rule, except for reverse angle parking where the back of the vehicle would face the curb. It seems to me that this is saying if there's an angle parking spot, you have to park with the front facing in, except if there's an angled parking spot, you can park with the front facing out. So why don't we just delete the requirement? Is it because there might be, I don't really, unless
I think there's a certain way you come in, isn't that right? That you can only do it if you're a certain direction.
It's only if there's two-way travel, but if we don't define reverse angle parking anywhere else in the ordinance, do we do that? Do we define reverse angle parking?
Well, we're trying to do that. Now, the angle parking that I think you're referring to near the Grove Arcade is straight in, 90-degree angles, and we're not intending for this rule to cover that. This is for angle parking like at a 45-degree angle, 60-degree angle.
That's what they have there, don't they? Yeah. On the, yeah. On the,
No, those are perpendicular.
Well, there's perpendicular on the ends, but
not on the ends, I'm saying on the sides where you pull in at an angle.
right. The intent there is know that those would need to be, they would head into those because angled parking, here, let me just show you the picture.
So where would this apply where you could park with the nose out?
College Street.
Well,
College Street. College.
right now, all of our angle parking, if we wanted to change it to the reverse angle parking, we have to switch the angle so that when you drive down the street right here, then you just back in.
Yep.
Okay? We don't want someone to be going against the
Right.
grain of traffic or to even switch lanes to back
Yes.
into it.
But around the,
So around the Grove Arcade, if we wanted to do the reverse angle parking there, then we would need to switch the spaces out.
but they're not, it's not one way.
No, it's two-way, but we don't want someone to back in across.
So we're not going to fix it there.
Right.
Well, okay, so I kind of have an issue with that because I hear a lot of people, either that or we need to do better with our signage in that area because people don't seem to understand that they can't do it because they encounter this circumstance where they're driving along, they see the space and they want to back into it. And they don't necessarily intend to come out of it and turn against the grain of the angle.
Mhm.
They are going to pull straight out. That seems like a challenge to me. It's not intuitive that that is illegal to do that.
Right.
And how do we know that they backed in from the other lane?
Well, we don't know. You're just
It's only if you see them doing it.
Right, that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
But they get ticketed regardless.
Well, the way it's written today, all the cars have to be
Yeah.
facing the curb.
Yeah.
So that was the intent. Now,
So, but this would only address College Street. It wouldn't address,
No, this is for another area altogether.
where is it for?
well, the way that we're trying to do this is just to give us the ability to do it in the future.
Not,
So we're not saying that
this wouldn't apply to any current parking situation?
That's right. That's correct. Now, if we want to clear that up, because that's an unintended consequence that we didn't address, then we probably need to do that. That's no problem.
Well, if we're going to adopt an ordinance change that talks about this, it says you, so I don't, this doesn't make sense then, because we're not defining reverse angle parking.
Should we extend this for this particular item for another
Hold
couple
this one.
weeks?
We
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
So I think public safety ought to chew on this a
Well-
little bit.
We actually saw this has a specific function coming forward,
Yeah.
and I don't know that it's time sensitive right now, but it's been reviewed by some commissions, and
I don't, maybe I'm the only one that hears complaints about this. Do you?
I've not seen any problems with that in that particular area.
So do you want to do it now or you want to pull it and wait?
If there's no downside to pulling it, I think everybody ought to be comfortable with it.
Give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All right, is that all right?
That's fine. We were trying to get ahead of the curve here, so it's not time sensitive.
So, sorry. You had no idea I had such an interest in reverse angle parking. Okay.
I have a question too.
Is it on
Since
this-
we're-
is it
no,
on this
no, no,
topic?
no,
No,
but-
okay.
No, but this really works in some places, but I really haven't seen too much of that at the Grove Arcade. Anyhow, it's a good thought. Now everybody will be doing it.
But they're not allowed to, just to be clear.
Whoops, I lost my spot.
You had a question about another item on the consent
Yes,
agenda?
the Oak Hill Commons and Bitat, D. Just a few questions about it. It seems like a really good.
Who's our person
good
on
opportunity.
item D? But
Jeff.
Jeff's here.
Okay. Jeff Stoninger's making his way to the front.
My first question, of course, is the term of the Housing Trust Fund loan of 30 years at 0%. That's stepping back out of the box a little bit. I was concerned about why we're doing that.
So the Housing Trust Fund policy states that can be requested for projects that are providing, we're providing projects, financing to projects that promise that they will rent to households at 60% of median income or less. Generally, our policy says that follows the 60% rent guidelines, which are the home guidelines. This project is promising to rent to households at 50% of median income or less, so it meets that criteria. But it is also looking at using the HUD housing voucher rent limits in order to be able to house households that have no money, frankly. The hard to house that are typically folks who have been chronically homeless and it has not worked for them to be in other permanent housing situations. So in light of that commitment to rent to households earning 50% or less of median income, the HCD committee recommended the waiver of that policy.
Okay.
To allow for 0% interest but 30-year financing for this project.
And which makes sense. We did, a number of years ago, pretty well make it a policy that we were staying away from the no interest, but that's justifiable. I guess I would probably like to have a little more description, and you touched on it, of what the hard to house is. What is that? And I understand it's chronically homeless, but are we talking about people with mental or addictions, and will there be on premises supervision of this?
Yes. These will be persons who have, as I said, have failed out or have not been able to make it in other permanent housing situations, including non-supported public housing situations. Homeward Bound is a project partner and will be providing supportive housing case management to every person who is housed in this facility as part of a condition of their being housed there. There will also be supportive services provided by MAHEC. So there'll be health clinics on site, there will be recovery group clinics on site, and there'll be a variety of other supportive services to serve individuals and households that have mental health disabilities, who have physical disabilities, who have been struggling with addiction and recovery. Also, unlike other supported housing developments, this will not require a credit check. So this will be able, Homeward Bound will actually be making the decision about which households will qualify for this.
Okay. The location, is it in the, we did a zoning number of years ago that was somewhat out of the neighborhood there. It was a flat land that ran. Where is it in relationship to the rest of the neighborhood?
So it's, if you were to go behind Ingalls and near the cemetery off of Oak Hill, it's in that quadrant near the railroad tracks.
Okay.
So it is not adjacent to the single-family housing that's in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I was hoping that's where it would be, because that's been just laying there for a long time. I have some concerns, and we're getting ready to do a rezoning tonight of some of what amounted to being a halfway house that was, or a group home that was run by the Flynn House in the Montford section, which seemed really good when we did it, and it was new construction, 3 units, and was going to have on-premises supervision and those sorts of things. Well, Flynn House, as good as they were, ended up not surviving for the perpetuity of that group home, and then it was taken over by a private concern that did not have quite the supervision and created a lot of problems for that neighborhood. God forbid that something were to happen to Homeward Bound. Do we have provisions of what happens to that once it?
A couple notes on that, Jan. First of all, the rezoning that's going to be requested is to be able to actually build 72 units on that site, of which only 24 are supported. The remainder are going to be new construction, market rate units, although the rents are going to be set at our affordability, or at least proposed to be set at our affordability limits, which we're very pleased about because they're not asking for additional housing trust fund resources or home resources to support that. They're going to do it with conventional financing and their equity. Secondly, we're going to condition the loan and its availability on providing housing, supported housing, to households of 50% of median income. And if they are not meeting that, which is both the support element and the affordability element, then that loan will be due and payable.
Okay.
All right.
Should that, and I know that my colleagues that are serving on HCD know this thing inside and out, and it just is coming at us without a lot of description. It leaves me somewhat still hanging there with what happens with the other units, and I just worry about putting something like this next to a neighborhood that ends up in private hands or into something later on.
Jan, if I may?
Yeah.
One of the really exciting things about this is the broad partnerships that are engaged in it. Buncombe County is coming in with money for operations here. Mission Hospital is in. Homeward Bound is in. The developer Ward Griffin is all in. I think that what you're talking about is what if Homeward Bound, like you said, God forbid, goes under, who takes over management? Yeah. And how do we guarantee that this maintains and safely maintains itself?
Yeah.
And I have a sense of confidence and security having that immense broad partnership put together, that between all of those folks, that should something unthinkable happen, that we'll be able to come together and solve that problem.
And, I think the $200,000, that's a lot of money. That's probably not as significant to me as the what-ifs. I guess, though, where would our position be on the $200,000? Are we third or fourth or somewhere way down the line on the payback of this, should it not work?
If you would ask that again, Jan, please.
Where are we on in the hierarchy of liens and loans on this?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be in second position on this, which is our housing trust fund policy.
I feel a lot better with the partners that we have there, because I think that the $200,000 is probably not nearly so significant as just leaving something like that out there for chance to take over. So I will be supportive of it with the partners we have there.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Any other? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. On this situation, so we've got $320,000 that we're committing to for the loan. We've got a projected year-end balance of $205,000. So there's a shortfall of, I don't know, 100 and something. So basically what we're saying here is we're only going to give out cash at this point, cash up to whatever balance we have. And then more money once the fund balance generates, either through cash inflow due to the new budget, or if some properties get sold or whatever. But am I understanding this, kind of the cash flow idea of this?
Yes.
So, I mean, if push comes to shove, which isn't going to happen, I understand, but if we weren't to sell the $50,000 worth of properties, or if the housing, the trust fund weren't to be funded in next year's budget, what would happen to those loan commitments?
Well, I'll just note that we actually have two properties that we are going to have for sale. One is the Skyloft condominium, which will be a return to our housing trust fund of at least $125,000. The other is the Villas property, which you're well aware of the work that has happened there, and we're negotiating with Habitat, as we have been for the past 3 years on that property. And we also have a commitment by the developers to not require cash until the new fiscal year. So we're very confident that the fund will, either through the combination of those sales, through income earned, even if no funds were allocated to the fund this year, income earned during the current year would be sufficient to make up that full amount of cash due to this loan commitment. So we're not going to be in a cash deficit situation, and will not allocate cash that we don't have for these loans.
Okay. That's what I wanted to hear.
Those are really great questions. I mean, we get to see this stuff month after month at HCD, but those are all really, really solid questions. Couldn't be more excited about the partners that we have on both of these. Jeff, you did a great job of outlining Oak Hill. All those 50% of area median income or below, 24 units. But also I see Kirk Booth here, and his 12 units, of those 12 units also in West Asheville, 6 of those are at 80% of median or below, and another 6 are at 60% of median or below. So these are private developers really putting their shoulders to the wheel to make affordable housing happen here in the city, and I'm just really grateful to be able to partner with them and to be able to make this trust fund do what it's supposed to do.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Any other, are we still doing the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda.
Except
with the
item I.
exception of item I.
I second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're moving into presentations and reports. The first is a presentation regarding the Food Policy Action Plan update, and Joey Robison will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Mannheimer and members of Council. As you know, the Food Policy Action Plan was adopted by Council 2 years ago now, and it was written with assistance from the Asheville-Buncombe Food Policy Council, and it includes 14 action items that address areas where city government can support food access and the local food economy. I have been acting as the staff liaison to the Food Policy Action Plan and the Asheville-Buncombe Food Policy Council since November, and I'm excited to share with you tonight some of the highlights of our progress on the action plan. One area in which we've seen some progress is in eliminating barriers for farmers markets. We have lowered the fees by 75%, and we've also shortened the approval process in the hopes that more farmers markets have an easier time starting up in the community. We've also renewed the lease for the City Market Farmers Market for both their summer and winter markets. In fact, the city holds 4 leases of city property that support food production and food access. The 2 with City Market. We've also got the 10-acre organic vegetable farm, currently with Balsam Gardens, and the lease with Danny's Dumpster for a composting facility, and that closes the loop between food production and nutrient management, so it's also a very important part of the process. The city also passed the Ag Amendment, which supports residential agriculture in two main ways. One is that it allows garden sheds or other structures to be built on lots that don't have a primary structure. So if you have an extra lot, an empty lot, there does not need to be a house in order to put up a garden shed or greenhouse or other type of structure like that. It also allows farm stands in residential areas, which helps increase accessibility. Now, in regards to livestock, I need to make a correction to the staff report that you received. Livestock is generally not permitted within the city limits, except when permitted for clearing of land and only for temporary purposes. Luckily, chickens aren't considered livestock, and both fowl and bees can be kept in accordance with our regulations in city lots. The Food Policy Council, whom I've been working a bit with, has given us this great opportunity to connect with Buncombe County on an online health dashboard that they are putting together with a variety of organizations. All of us are putting our data together, and together that collective data is going to help tell the story of our local progress on our local food accessibility. So we will be providing data that we've already collected or that we collect on a regular basis to help populate this along with lots of other organizations in the community. Of course, we have some opportunities for making more progress that are coming up on the horizon. The U.S. Cellular Center, at the time of the Food Policy Action Plan was adopted, was already in contract with a food service provider. But that contract is expiring this June. And so as I spoke with Cellular Center staff, they let me know that they are working on making sure that the RFP process makes it easy and clear that local food is encouraged and wanted by people, companies that are looking to hold that contract with us. The compost feasibility study is also underway right now, and we are expecting that information to come back sometime this spring, so you should hear about that soon as well. Another opportunity that's listed in the action plan is to incorporate edible landscaping into parks and greenways. Since the action plan has been adopted, the Parks Department has considered and used edibles more often than prior to that. However, at this time, there are insufficient resources to manage a significant landscaping program on parklands. Primarily at this point, with the existing resources that we have, it requires that we're planting to the minimum requirements on parklands and as few maintenance needs as possible, and oftentimes edibles do not quite meet that requirement. I presented this update at PED last month, and a couple of questions came up, so I wanted to make sure to have those answers for you tonight. The first one was about fire marshal inspections and why we've been seeing increased fire marshal inspections at farmers markets in the community. I spoke with Development Services, and the inspections are indeed a safety issue. Every week, the farmers markets take down or put up and take down the entire market. There are a lot of farmers that will have a cooler or a refrigeration system. There are also places that are making food and selling hot food, and so there's a lot of electrical that's going on within the markets, and it changes every time. So our policy is that we do these inspections every time, and we are becoming more consistent with enforcing that, which is why we're seeing additional inspections. However, the inspection fees, even though they pay for every one of the inspections, when they get their permit, we figure out how many times they'll be open and what those inspection fees are. That is all combined into their original fee, and that is reduced by 75%. So they're not getting increased, any increased cost to these inspections beyond what they were supposed to be getting in the first place. The other question that came up was about the recommended species list for commercial property, and where are we with this thing? So I've been working with the members of the Tree Commission and staff, and we've come up with a procedure that gives the tree commission the ability to be the keeper of the species list, and they are the ones that are able to decide on recommendations. So if a different organization from the community has some suggestions, they can bring that to the tree commission. The tree commission can then decide, in their opinion, whether or not something should be recommended and let us know why. And that list will go to staff, and then staff, in a timely fashion, will respond about the things that are on their recommendation list, whether or not we can include those, and if not, why we're not including those, so that it's very clear to everybody what the reasonings are. I'm going to be presenting about that procedure at their meeting on Monday. And we're also in the process of setting up a meeting with tree commission members and staff to discuss their most recent recommendations and see what we can come up with that. So staff has made significant progress, I think, on the action list. We continue to look for opportunities to increase the items on the action list that we're addressing. And I want to just thank you all for the work that you've done on this, and I am available for questions.
Other questions? Courtney, you want to?
Yeah, do you guys have anything? Okay. Thanks, Joey. That was really great, and it's so good to see so much progress getting made in all this. And before I go any further, I wanted to ask if Laura Cheatham is here, a representative of the Food Policy Council is here, just to briefly speak to the process, the partnership process, the data gathering that's going on. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Cheatham. I'm with the Health and Education Cluster for the Food Policy Council. And I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Joey was talking about with the Healthy Living Metrics initiative right now. So basically, the CHIP process has also begun using the results-based accountability framework, which serves as the basis for the online scorecard software that she was talking about, to assist in determining the best measures that we're going to be identifying. So our working group, which has about close to 50 organizations right now, has met 2 times, and right now we're working on establishing a 3rd time for us to go ahead and meet. So we're just kind of really getting into the nitty-gritty of identifying what best measures to use for that. And then secondly, what we're most excited about is we're right now working on establishing partnerships with both ASAP and also with UNCA's their nutrition department with Dr. Amina Batata, and then also a few students that are under her right now. We're working on establishing a relationship to be able to have ongoing research supported by UNCA for collecting, analyzing, and tracking some metrics for demonstrating the impact of efforts of our council, and then also for the city as well. This Friday, we have a meeting with working towards formalizing that partnership with UNCA, and we'll just continue to keep you guys updated on how that progress goes and what we can do to support you all, and vice versa. So that's kind of where we are right now. Thanks for inviting us to come and speak to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
It's so great to see that Food Policy Council keep its momentum going and to really work towards establishing these metrics, because I think that we're heading towards Food Action Plan 2.0 at some point, and to be able to have it be data-driven and to be able to have some real firm markers is going to be helpful for establishing those policies. I did have a couple of questions, Joey. Well, first, one comment, something that has been happening that didn't make the presentation today, but it was allocation of CDBG funds towards food-related items and supporting the Ujamaa Freedom Market. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Did I get it right?
Seems close.
Was one of the things that this council approved in last year's CDBG funding. I just wanted to point that out as well. You were talking about the edibles in parks and rights-of-way. I was just wondering about growing partnerships around that. I know the Buncombe Fruit and Nut Club, probably the best named club in the county, is working with Buncombe County, and they've got a bunch of fruit trees planted at one of the parks out west, and I'm just wondering where we are in building that kind of partnership.
My understanding is that we have worked with the Fruit and Nut Club on and off throughout the years, and I believe that Parks Department staff are in communication with them right now.
Okay, so ongoing. Great.
Yes.
There's great appreciation for the name Fruit and Nut Club here tonight.
I want to join.
I want to, yeah. I probably am a member and
We're
I'm
all
unaware.
members. And also just to point out that in the report, it talked about the UDO piece being completed, but in recognition that we've completed a couple pieces there, but that's going to be an ongoing analysis as we determine ways to improve policy, to improve food security. We'll be back around that UDO stuff. And I guess I appreciate you doing this right now, and it's my understanding that Maggie Ullman was quarterbacking this stuff until she departed the city, and now you, and so when the new sustainability director comes in, will that person be quarterbacking, or will it continue to be you? Who's going to marshal this stuff?
I believe it will be their decision.
I see. To be determined. Okay. So until then, it'll be you. And do I have any other questions? Not right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have one other presentation or report, in this case, the legislative update process, and I believe I have Robin down here.
Okay. All right, and there are a couple of documents. The long session convened last month. What we are planning to do is Alex and his folks, I think, are going to provide a tracking mechanism throughout the session that will be on the council website so you can follow along and see where different bills are. Alex, do you have an example of that you can throw up there on the screen? Just quickly. They're also planning on doing a week in review newsletter to let you know what's going on, and then do updates at council meeting as requested or as needed. Right now, this is posted on the website now. And I talked with our lobbyist, Jack Kazort, yesterday morning. There are just a few bills right now that are out there that might be of concern. The first thing is the eminent domain bill, which I think the thought is that it's going to be approved, and that adds a constitutional amendment and some changes in Chapter 40A that say you can only take private property for a public use. It used to say public use and public purpose. We've looked back over our prior takings and feel that, we've been told there's really nothing to be done about it at this time, but haven't seen any grave issues that will arise as a result of that. The other thing is the parking meters. There has been concern that unless there's a specific provision allowing you to pay electronically, maybe that didn't exist. People were doing that, or cities were doing that by local bill. Now there is a general bill for the entire state. The other thing is the aesthetic zoning controls are back in the mix. There is some negotiation going on with the league. There is a thought that it will be passed in some shape or form, but there's still some alternatives being proposed that might be better than the draft that we now see. So that's about all I have, unless you have some questions.
Just adding on the eminent domain bill, I know that part of the committee discussion was a question about land that might have been taken by a city for some public purpose, say 20 years ago, and now is residual for some reason, is no longer useful for that purpose it was originally taken. The question was whether you could then use it. In our case, it might be a situation where it's leveraged for housing, and a private developer is going to do the housing, or, just as an example. I guess some questions came up in committee, and the unsatisfactory response was, well, it'll come down to intent, and the court will determine that. So, in a case-by-case basis, if it's 20 years between the taking and then the use that's in question, clearly the intent at the time of the taking would be different. But anyway, one of the concerns I have is that when the court is looking at this kind of legislation, if there is a legal challenge, all of the chatter in committee and on the floor is not admissible. And so it's only within the bill language. And so I've encouraged the North Carolina Metro mayors to at least advocate for some whereas clauses that'll be embedded in the bill to indicate the intent, so we don't run into that situation. But it does seem that the bill's going to move forward regardless. I'm going to be making my first trip down to the legislature for this session this coming Tuesday, and plan to meet with Senator Apodaca and the new Secretary of Commerce while I'm down there. And hopefully we'll get a better feel for what else we might expect to see this session.
And I've looked at it as well, and I do know that there are not any changes to the sort of statute of limitations for raising inverse condemnation or constitutional claims, so hopefully that would be helpful for us if there's something that was taken a long time ago, that there wouldn't be a mechanism for that to be undone a number of years later.
It wouldn't be triggered at the time of the later transfer.
Right.
We're 20 years later.
I would hope not.
Mm-hmm. I continue to hear for cities and counties broadly the concern this session about the discussion surrounding the sales tax. Mm-hmm. Sales tax reform, and then the sales tax allocation formula, whether there's going to be a change in the sales tax allocation formula to move sales tax distribution away from cities into more rural areas. So we'll be at the table trying to participate in that conversation, as will many local governments across the state that are concerned with that issue. Okay, but anything further? Anyone have any questions on this topic? All right, we're going to move into the public hearing portion of our agenda. The first item on the public hearings agenda, item A, a public hearing to consider conditional zoning of property located on Broad Street from RM16 Residential Multifamily High Density District to CBI-CZ Community Business I District Conditional Zoning, or it's CB1. CB1, sorry. Community Business 1 District Conditional Zoning to construct a 2-story building with office space on the first floor and 3 residential units on the second floor with a change condition request to the landscape requirements. And Julia Fields will talk to us about this item.
Thank you, Mayor Mannheimer, members of council. This is, as you indicated, a conditional zoning request to rezone property on Broad Street from RM16 to CB1CZ. Just to orient you, the subject property consists of 6,624 square feet located on what will be addressed. It's currently a vacant piece of property. It will be addressed 135 Broad Street, and also a portion of what was an unopened right-of-way, but now has been closed by you all, I believe, at your last meeting, which would add an additional 1,040 square feet for a total development parcel of 7,664 square feet. The property is currently vacant and zoned RM16, as we previously indicated.
Vacant meaning it's undeveloped, right? It's
Correct.
Just a lot, yeah.
Well, let me get back to this. The property to the east and to the north along Broad Street is also zoned CB1 and contains offices. Property to the south is zoned CB1 and contains a restaurant. And property to the west is zoned RM16. Immediately, there is a single-family home here, but as you move on down Broad Street, there are quite a number of multifamily structures in the area. The proposal by Broad Properties LLC is to construct a new mixed-use building. It'll be 2 stories in height, 24 feet to be specific on the site. The building will contain 1,800 square feet of commercial business space on the first floor, with 1,800 square feet of residential space on the second floor that will contain 3 one-bedroom apartments. And you have some elevations. I have them here if you want to see them further. But there are some elevations, and the building was designed by the architect who is here representing the developer to be residential in character and blend in with other structures along Broad Street. The applicant has agreed to condition the development to limit the use of the first floor to only offices or instructional uses, and also to limit signage to a maximum of 10 square feet per sign face and 4 feet in height, recognizing that they are in a residential area or moving into a residential area. Access to the site, you can see here, will be via a 14-foot driveway, which leads to a parking area containing 6 spaces. Sidewalks already exist along Broad, and there is an accessible pedestrian path back to the back of, and the entrance is here on the side to the west. But there is also, I think, a proposal that there will be an easement granted, if the easement doesn't already exist, to cover the existing sidewalk. Landscaping is compliant with one exception, and there is a request to condition the project for reduced buffer yard here along the western side of the property. Because there are so many constraints, they want to narrow the buffer from 20 feet to 10 feet to 4 feet. It'll be 10 feet here in the front and then go down to 4 feet in the back. There is a fence on the adjoining property in the rear here. Staff is supportive of this because the developer is proposing to provide all of the required plantings, just not the width there. And I'm recognizing again that this is a very tight site to work in. The project was reviewed by the Technical Review Committee in October and was recommended to you with conditions. The project didn't come to you more quickly because the ability to do 3 units instead of 2 units was contingent on you all passing the density bonuses for CB1 and the other non-residential districts, which you recently did. So the ability to go from 2 units is the first time you're seeing the effect of that. 2 units to 3 units is now before you. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request on January 7th and unanimously voted to recommend this project to you. And that completes my presentation.
Any questions? All right, I will open the public. Oh, do we have the applicant here to speak? Would you like to speak on this? No. Okay. Only as needed. All right. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to comment on item A on the public hearings agenda? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. All right. Do a questions, comment, or a motion, Council?
Mayor, I move to approve the conditional zoning request of Broad Properties LLC for property located at what will be addressed 135 Broad Street from RM 16 Residential Multifamily High Density District to CBICZ Community Business 1 Conditional Zoning, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, and consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans in that, 1, the proposed uses on the property are in keeping with the other uses in the area and create a good transition between higher intensity uses and lower intensity residential uses. And 2, the proposal supports the goal found in the city's comprehensive plan for pursuing compatible infill development.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. All right, the only other item on our public hearings agenda, public hearing to consider a subdivision with conditional zoning on property located at 141, 145, and 149 Cortlandt Avenue from RS8 Residential Single Family High Density District to RM8CZ Residential Multifamily Medium Density District. Conditional zoning to 1, allow the conversion of 3 existing group home buildings into multifamily units and the subdivision of land to locate those buildings on separate lots, and 2, to establish 7 additional single-family home lots with a change condition request to the landscape and open space standards. Again, Julia Fields.
This request is for a conditional zoning from RS8 to RM8 conditional zoning. The request is for a 2.63 acre parcel at 141, 145, and 149 Cortlandt Avenue, and you spoke about that earlier. This was the location of three, well, it was actually, I think it functioned as one group home, but it was in three separate structures previously. The current property, as I indicated, is RS8, and it's surrounded, except for there on the west, by properties also zoned RS8 and predominantly single-family homes. To the left, you have unzoned DOT right-of-way. Currently on the site, as we've discussed, there are the three structures previously used as a group home, and there are a number of trees and a stream to the southern portion of the property. And the property, if you are familiar with it, slopes down to that portion of the site. The plans are from RPMM Properties LLC to subdivide the property, and you can see the different lots here, into two new residential lots. 7 of these lots will contain single-family homes or will be designed for single-family homes, and you can see them here. The other 3 will contain the 3 existing buildings, and it's proposed that these buildings will be converted to have 2 dwelling units within each of these 2 structures, and then 3 units in that particular structure. The buildings, and there's some representative, and I've got them here if you want to look at them. There are some representative elevations. I haven't actually designed the project, but it will be designed, again, to blend with the character of the surrounding area, even though this is not part of the Montford Historic District. It's close, but it's not in the actual historic district. Access to all of the properties will be off of Cortland, and additional sidewalk is not required per the ordinance. There is sidewalk, I think, up to about this point on the site. They have, it was requested by our transportation department to gain an easement both on the existing sidewalk as well as the remainder of the property to facilitate any future sidewalk development that the city might undertake, and that condition has been agreed to by the developer. Parking is provided for the different residential structures on each of the lots, but they have very thoughtfully used shared driveways, so there's not as many curb cuts and not as many access points along Cortland. All city standards have been met with 2 exceptions. One is to the buffer. Because this is RM8, and the reason that this is going to RM8 is because you have multiple unit structures here, so the fact that it's RM8 would require a buffer to all adjacent RS8 properties doesn't make a lot of sense, because you'd be buffering mostly single family, but otherwise duplex and triplexes from other single family homes, and really kind of carving that area out from the rest of the neighborhood. So staff is supportive of waiving that particular requirement. There is, and they do propose to leave a lot of the vegetation here to the south of the property anyway. There is also a request to waive the standard that's an open space standard that 25% that open space over 25% slope cannot account for more than 50% of the needed open space. Again, if you visited this piece of property, you can see it's quite steep. There is the quantity of open spaces provided, they just can't meet this standard, and again, staff is supportive of that particular condition. TRC reviewed this project in December and recommended it to you. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this also at the January meeting. They approved the major subdivision at that time, contingent on the rezoning, and unanimously recommended the rezoning to you. The developer did attend a meeting of the Montford Community Association. There were a few questions about exactly what conditional zoning was, but otherwise I think it's fair to say that the community was in favor of the proposal. And that completes my presentation.
Yeah. Any questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. All right, and this time I'll open the public hearing on item B on the public hearings agenda. Is there anyone wishing to comment?
There is a representative from the developer.
Oh, and is there a representative of the developer here? Would you like to comment?
I don't have any direct comments. I believe that the staff gave an adequate picture of what we're trying to do, except for the fact that the developers aren't here today. That I'm representing them as a planner, and they're out of town, and they're sorry to not be here. Right now, we're in the process of due diligence in this real estate deal. The need to understand the zoning requirements brought us to this before the sale. And we're in the process of trying to decide the costs and the benefits of the idea of purchasing this in its entirety. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for being here, Ms. Crown. So you're doing your due diligence now, and so it may not come to pass, is what you're telling us. You're trying to figure out if you can make this work there, and getting the zoning nailed down is one of those steps.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And it's also my understanding that the developer may be willing to, with one of those 7 rental units, condition the zoning on providing one affordable unit there for a period of 10 years to someone at 80% of area median income or below.
Right. They won't be rental units. They'll be sold as condos or townhouses with a common area within the building. But we have had brief conversations with the planning staff about the possibility of affordable housing. And though our decision hasn't been made yet, they are relatively aware of what the conditions are and aren't adverse to it. But like I said, this is still a process of trying to decide the affordability of the entire project before they move forward.
Any other questions?
Well, the question about conditioning one of the units to be affordable, if it's an ownership unit, we don't really have a structure to do that with. So I don't. Yeah. So when we say condition, this conditional zoning would not include that.
Yeah,
sort of
it was my impression that those were rentals, not.
No, but they would be willing to. Possibly be willing. Like I said, their decisions are still need to be made, but the possibility of selling one of those units, particularly on the most eastern building, is a possible scenario.
I think it's a great reuse of using what could have been a bad thing and has been at times, and redoing it to what I think will be a really good fit. So I'd like to make a motion if there's no further questions.
Well, let's finish the public hearing part, and then we'll be ready for a motion.
Mayor,
that was
Lucy.
Lucy Crown, representing the applicant.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? All right, I will close the public hearing. Now, Jan, is your moment to make your motion.
My moment for the motion. I move to approve the conditional zoning request of RPMM Properties LLC for property located at 141, 145, and 149 Cortlandt Avenue from RS8 Residential Single Family High Density District to RM8CZ Residential Multifamily Medium Density District Conditional Zoning, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, and is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans, in that the proposal supports the goal found in the city's comprehensive plan of promoting compatible adaptive reuse of existing structures. The proposal supports the goal found in the city's comprehensive plan of pursuing compatible infill development.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that concludes the public hearings portion of the agenda. Thank you. Under new business, I will turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Boards and Commissions Committee report, Mayor. First item relates to candidate essay questions for the City Schools Board of Education. And let me just offer a little bit of background and timeline. We are at that point in the cycle where there are 2 vacancies coming up on the school board. We have 2 members, Precious Fulston and Jacqueline Hallam, who are essentially terming out after having served the past 6 years almost now. And so we would appoint 2 new members. Just to remind the public the timeline, we're eager for good quality applicants to come forward and apply. The deadline, I believe, is February 23rd, 24th. That was close. The process, once we get those applications in, the City Council on our March 10th meeting will narrow the field down to a certain number of finalists, perhaps in the range of 5 or so, and then we will make our final selections on March 24th. After we approve these questions tonight, Maggie Burleson, the city clerk, will distribute them to the candidates. They will respond in writing so that when we make our decisions later, we'll have the benefit of those. Let me add one other thing here. There's been some coverage in the media recently about the potential for background checks being conducted for school board applicants. And there's been some energy put in on the part of our city staff and attorney, and some of us on the council have had conversations with people in the community about that. And it's an important topic. There seem to be more questions emerging about how might that process happen, if it is going to happen. There are legal questions. There are questions of who plays which role in doing background checks if they're going to happen. And what I would say is that we're going to work actively with the staff and school people at the school superintendent in the school board to sort this out in terms of a path forward. I would say to any candidates considering applying, there may be a requirement to submit to consent to a background check, and that may indeed be part of the process as we move towards these appointments. So there are a series of 5 questions that the Boards and Commissions Committee reviewed. Council, I think, has read through them all. If we had a chance to look at them, they're kind of detailed. I'm not sure the public would want to hear them, but I think we all know what the questions are. They're right here. Anybody in the public that's interested in them later, you'd be welcome to take a look at them. They have to do with familiarity, qualifications, perspectives on various aspects of oversight of the school system. So that is, I suppose, a report, and I would ask for a set of nods regarding the questions that we've reviewed as a way to go forward. Okay. So that wraps that one up. In terms of boards and commissions interviews and possible appointments, there's a list of 5 that we would cover here today. The first is an appointment to one seat on the African American Heritage Commission. The commission has actually requested that we extend that for 2 weeks while they consider who they might prefer, 4 weeks from now, while they consider who they might want to interview themselves and recommend we entertain recommendations from boards and commissions. The next board is the Airport Authority Board. We have a vacancy there to appoint to. There was one applicant, Stephanie Brown, who also is the Executive Director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Boards and Commissions Committee recommends appointment of Stephanie Brown. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about that appointment? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Citizens Police Advisory Committee requires a South Asheville resident appointment. The committee recommends the appointment of Clifford Jocelyn to that seat. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of Clifford Jocelyn? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Civil Service Board Chair. Unlike most of our other boards, or perhaps all of our other boards, City Council, under the statute, actually must appoint the chairperson of the Civil Service Board, and that person must be from among the 5 members. Having interviewed folks and had discussions, Alan Coxey is the recommendation of the Boards and Commissions Committee for the chairmanship of the Civil Service Board. So I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion there? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Finally, Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee. One vacancy there. The committee recommends the appointment of Allison Bond, who works at the VA Center, to fill that role. A motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that wraps it up, Mayor.
Concluded? All right, and in fact, that concludes our meeting today. We have a public comment period now, and I have one person signed up to speak, Carl Soulsby.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. My name is Carl Soulsby. I currently reside at 641 Brevard Road, and my property is zoned, I think it's RS8 or RMA. Anyhow, it's residential. And we're a neighborhood in transition. And as a matter of fact, I live in the service department of the Anderson Nissan dealership. We're pretty close to it. And so hopefully that won't be for too much longer, but at any rate, I've got a concrete plant in my back door, and I've been told for years that if there was a problem with the noise, that I need to file a complaint, and I lived with it. They've owned that property since 2006. Previously, it was owned by a Brownlow Hyder of Hyder Waste, and when Mr. Hyder opened the concrete plant down there, after a while he began to make concrete in the wee hours of the morning, and so after keeping my kids awake, then finally one day I came up here and complained, and they did some mediation here in this chamber, and when they did, they found that Mr. Hyder needed to operate his business in a more suitable time frame. Well, that was mediation, is what I'm told. And so I received a letter to that effect, and Mr. Hyder was very gracious, but I didn't realize that he had Southern Concrete on the hook and was fixing to sell him his business. And Southern is a big outfit. And in the meantime, the economy has picked up. They're operating 10-plus concrete trucks out of there. They're 175 feet from my property line. After 7 years of listening to them, I filed a noise ordinance complaint, and I'm told that even though the noise ordinance itself does not hold the criteria that there has to be 2 or more households there, not in the ordinance itself, but in order to file a complaint that will be considered, which I did today, I was told that they would not consider my complaint. And so I called my attorney who's handling another matter for me, Mr. Gottschalk, and he suggested that I come up and speak to you folks. The times when I figured if they were going to wake me up at 2:30 in the morning, I was finally, after 7 years, I was going to call the APD and have them come out, and I've wasted countless man hours and been told you have to file a complaint, you have to file a complaint, you have to file a complaint. I have a 9-page complaint starting in December the 1st, running through January the 28th. 15 of those complaints, they have made concrete between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m. And after 7 years, they finally, in order to try and pacify me, they turned a floodlight down which shone directly into my bedroom, and it was like it was basically about like this, and I have complete shades. They did that to pacify me. So I'm told over and over and over again, you have to file a complaint. And so I took the time to document it, call the APD, and I really felt bad because I'm wasting man hours. And then I'm saying we can't hear your complaint because there aren't 2 households there to complain. And so I'm asking myself, what's wrong with this? You mean they can do this to me in my home, but if there's not someone else, then my rights really don't count. And then I'm told that it's the city council who established the criteria that there has to be 2 or more homes. And I feel like reasonableness and fairness after 7 years, you know, if you won't stand up for 1, why would you stand up for 2?
Well, thank you for making us aware of this issue, and yeah. Go ahead.
Well, a police officer, I'm the liaison for the Noise Ordinance Board, and a police officer can file a complaint. So if the police officer is telling you that they can't file a complaint, they can actually issue a ticket. Well, I mean, that's the truth. So that may be something that we follow up with the
APD on. And then the other question I have is, zoning-wise, is it okay for?
We'd have to find out whether it's in our zoning jurisdiction, whether there's a permit issued, and there's also a concrete plant that has state permits, which often have hour limitations and that type of thing. You might want to look at that, but we can look at where it's located and.
Do you have a copy of anything that you can leave with us, or is that your only copy?
I gave a copy of everything I have here to Miss Janet Lampkin, and she's the one, and she may be sitting here, I don't know. Did she call?
You have a copy of it. So this is one of our city attorneys sitting behind you who says he has a copy of it.
Yes, we spoke today, Mr. Maddox. And what I'm asking is, I know that your time is very valuable, and I was told that you folks, it would take a change of the legislation that you folks make the rules. And all I'm asking, I've jumped through the hoops and did the documentation. As a matter of fact, I've also got on here, I've got a letter from my doctor, and August the 22nd of 2013, I had a heart attack. And on December the 14th of 2014, after my doctor had released me, the stress became so bad that I went to the hospital after eating nitroglycerin thinking I was having another heart attack. Now, I'm not a thin-skinned person, but after eating 3 nitroglycerin pills and spending $1,000 and a day at the Mission Hospital over stress, this is unreasonable. And all I'm asking is that you remove the criteria that says there have to be 2 people that complain from separate households. I'm willing to go the mile and stand and do the paperwork, but you folks made those regulations, and nobody will go against those because that's what's in writing. And I'm just asking that you rescind that criteria, to at least back it down to where say he has the right to stand up and say, look. And I saw one of the guys in the grocery store, and I said, how'd that pour go the other night? How many yards did you make? 800 yards. Now, they didn't pour 800 yards on a state job that night. And so just back it down to 1 person. I filed a complaint. I would appreciate it. That's reasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in, making sure that they're conforming to whatever rules that they have. If there needs to be some exemption for single property owners next to concrete plants, I'd definitely be supportive of that as well.
And can I just say one more thing, and I'll quit.
Okay, we're being really lenient with the time with the.
I know you are, and I appreciate it. My thing is, when I waste the time to call that police officer, and he comes out there, after they've slammed the side of this concrete truck with the metal hammer, and the officer comes out there and says, oh, I'm so sorry, did we wake him up? And this goes on for 7 years. Let's be reasonable. You can't make concrete without slamming a backhoe bucket on the ground, throwing a metal ladder down, and that siren, that thing they've got down there in the hopper that they run, I can hear it in my bedroom. And then they like to blow the horns when they go out after I call the APD to let me know that, hey, it's time to get up and go to work.
Yeah.
So they're very unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have in terms of folks that have already signed up to speak tonight, but anyone else is welcome to speak. Is there anyone else wishing to speak during the public comment period? All right, if not, we do have a closed session. Yes, I'm sorry.
Just one quick thing that we got a letter yesterday from David Brown, our representative in the State Board of Transportation, with good news that the DOT has approved a traffic light at the intersection of Coleman and Merriman, as you'll recall, was the site of a fatality before the new year. And what we understand it to be is that we'll have a traffic light installed there by summer, and that as well that the DOT is evaluating elsewhere on Merriman Avenue for other pedestrian improvements. So, but at Coleman, my understanding is a traffic light and pedestrian crossing improvements as well too.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I move that the Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reasons. 1, to prevent disclosure of information that's privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is the NC Statute 143.318.103. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1. And 2, to consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and its attorney must be preserved, including but not limited to a lawsuit involving the following parties: the City of Asheville versus Robert Frost. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Second.
All right, and we will adjourn from the closed session.
You want to vote on that? Or you don't have to vote on it.
Let's vote.
All those in favor say
Aye.
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 Thank you for the reminder.
I couldn't believe people didn't stay.